Okay, good evening. We'll begin. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So we're studying chapter 10, starting now, chapter 10. This chapter is called The Opulence of the Absolute. It speaks about the Lord's vibhutis. So this becomes an important word for this chapter. The word vibhuti, Hare Krishna, Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. So the word vibhuti basically means expansive glory of God, or God's glory expanded in the world. And it refers to the various opulent and kind of wonderful and astonishing things we encounter in the world that kind of gives a sense that there's something higher and wonderful. For example, we'll hear in this chapter of all great aquatics, I am the best of those aquatics, a particular type of fish that's very large. Of all mountains, I am the Himalayan mountains. Of secret things, I'm silent. So in this way, Krishna will speak, and he's spoken of these things earlier, of his great opulences. One time, when Srila Prabhupada was walking, he would go for morning walks, and he was walking one time, and the sun was rising. And one of his disciples said, "Wow, what a beautiful sunrise." And Prabhupada said, "If you think that's beautiful, wait until you meet the artist." Something to the effect that the disciple was saying, "What beautiful artistry." And Prabhupada said, "If you think that is beautiful, wait until you meet the actual artist." So the idea is that a vibhuti is kind of an astonishing glory of the Lord that we encounter in this world. It's a material thing ultimately, but it is an astonishing thing that kind of points us or gives an intuition that there's something greater and powerful and wonderful. And just like if you're standing at the edge of the ocean and you're seeing just how big it is, and you feel very humbled by that, and you feel it very glorious and wonderful. So these are called vibhutis. We'll get into that a little bit more detail later when we actually go to the list of vibhutis Krishna mentions. But the idea of Krishna speaking about this in this chapter is that when you hear about the opulence of someone, that it increases your attraction to them. We gave example before like this. Suppose Bill Gates is a very charitable person. So suppose he comes inside with a blank check and he says, "I want to give blank check to everyone." Then immediately you cannot focus in the class anymore. Because blank check, that's very attractive. Before I'm spiritual, but as soon as he said blank check, and he's giving it freely also, then immediately you cannot focus. And you're naturally attracted because of the opulence of some great person. Or suppose Bill Gates, same example, he walks in, but no one knows what he looks like. So he's just a nobody. You like see it, just like, you don't care. But then someone comes and says, "That's Bill Gates." Then all of a sudden you become very interested, isn't it? It is like this. So whenever you hear about the opulence of some great person, then you naturally become attracted to them. And you may even become dedicated to them, depending on the degree of greatness. So Krishna has intermittently spoken about his glories in previous chapters. Chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9 also. There's sections where he's spoken about his vibhutis. For example, where he says, "I'm the taste and water, I'm the ability in man, I'm the heat and fire, I'm the austerity of the austere," etc. I am kama or lust that is not devoid of irreligious principles. That is devoid of irreligious principles. Like this, he's spoken different lists, speaking of his glories. And the idea is that by hearing about the glories of God, then your dedication, it nourishes bhakti. To hear about the greatness of God nourishes bhakti, and therefore his glories are being discussed and in greater detail. One of the main reasons why the world is becoming more and more secular is because they don't hear about God ever. And in many places now it is also disallowed. So that's why how the world becomes secular. It's not just that because there's great arguments and evidence for the non-existence of God. Those arguments have been going on for practically beginninglessly. They've been going on forever. Still, there's always been a great God consciousness. But now because they don't hear about the glories of God, then people's dedication, devotion to God shrinks. And it's very interesting, like if you look at this country, the vast majority of people in this country still identify as religious. Many still identify as Christians, and maybe if they're from other traditions, they identify with those traditions. But as far as their lived life is concerned, it doesn't demonstrate anything religious practically whatsoever. They may not go to church anymore because God is everywhere. He's also in my heart, so I don't need to go to a church to believe in God and so on. So I found that interesting. Like a huge portion of America still really believes in God, like philosophically or theologically, but it doesn't really, that dedication is not seen as you might have expected from, like, let's say the apostles in the beginning who were dedicated to Jesus. You don't see that type of dedication. And there may be many factors why that happens, but one of the main factors is that they don't hear about God. So by hearing about God, particularly his power, this is called Aishwarya in Sanskrit. By hearing about his power, opulence, then naturally that nourishes bhakti, and bhakti grows. And by not hearing about God, then bhakti is diminished. That's why in bhakti tradition, our tradition, we very much emphasize on hearing, shravana. Even I personally tend to emphasize that even more than chanting. Because with chanting is okay, it's nice. But if you're not a very advanced devotee, then chanting as your main practice may not actually sustain you. Because you don't know enough about Krishna to, at some point you may question why I'm doing this chanting also. And if you don't know about God's glory, you actually can forget. And then you just go away. There are many stories like that. So for this reason, Krishna wants to speak more and more about his vibhutis or opulences for the purpose of nourishing bhakti. So we'll take first few verses here. In the first verse, he says here, Bhuya eva mahabaho shrinu me paramam vacha. Yate aham piyamarnaya vakshami hitakamya. So this is the translation. Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna. Bhuya eva mahabaho. So again, you hear me. What do you want to hear? O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend, for your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. So Bhuya eva mahabaho shrinu me paramam vacha. So he's asking Arjuna again here. Paramam vacha, my supreme words. Paramam vacha means my supreme words. Now Arjuna is already hearing. So what does it mean? He said again here. Anyway, he's sitting there hearing. So the idea of saying again you hear is to make him attentive. Just like now you're hearing, kind of. Probably, I assume you're hearing. But then sometimes, especially if the class is going long, and then the mind just kind of drifts a little bit. And so then I say here. And then you kind of come to, and then you focus in on whatever I'm about to say next. So Arjuna is not spacing out, so that is not the problem, but he wants Arjuna to focus more deeply on what he's about to say. So he says again here, Paramam vacha, my supreme words, which I will now speak to. Why are you speaking these supreme words, Paramam vacha, for this chapter refers to his opulences. As I mentioned, Krishna has already previously spoken of them in chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9. But those took up very small portions in those chapters. So now this whole chapter will be dedicated to that. So he's saying, Bhuya me, you hear again, Paramam vacha, my supreme words concerning my opulences, which nourishes bhakti, as I've just described. Why are you speaking this to me? Vakshami hita kamya. I am speaking this to you, hita kamya, because I have a desire to benefit you. Hita means to benefit. Kamyaya means desire. I have a desire to benefit you. And how is the soul benefited? In this context, the soul is benefited by nourishing bhakti. So whatever is done to nourish the bhakti of the soul is working for their benefit. So I have desire to benefit you, therefore I'm speaking to you. Otherwise, I would not speak. Especially in Bhakti Vedanta traditions like ours, then our concept of benefit is that which helps the soul connect with God. And that's called bhakti, how souls connecting to God. So to benefit souls ultimately means to get them connected to God. So there are different strategies by which one can do that, of course. But the main strategy is to get them to hear about God. That is the main way people are benefited, actually. So it's not that we don't believe in like other, we can call them practical forms of welfare, such as feeding people or giving clothes distribution is there. These are also nice, important activities. But we don't, in Bhaktivedanta traditions, they don't consider that benefiting the soul. That may be benefiting the body and mind of a soul, which can be very useful so the soul can focus on higher things. But if they get those things without focusing on higher things, then what is the benefit? Just like I remember talking to a student once, and this is years ago. I was a little bit mean, so this example is not. I shouldn't give this example actually. But one kid, he was talking about maybe the glories of technology or advancements in science and so on, and I was kind of downplaying them. And students, I was a monk. When I was a monk, I used to go to one university every single day of the week. Well, the school week, 5 days a week, and I would stand on one corner for about sometimes up to 8 to 12 hours, sometimes standing on one corner. And I would meet many students in this way. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. So a lot of students would come and just argue with me because, I'd have some fun. And I was also a young guy, so I also like to argue with them. So in this way, there was argument in between me and one student. And I was downplaying science and he was glorifying science. So I said, what is the evidence? And he had mentioned that he had diabetes. And because science had made some medicine, insulin, now it helped him to manage his diabetes. So that was his example that he gave. And it was very personal, so it makes it a little bit more compelling. But then I asked him, so what are you doing with your life? And he said, well, I can watch TV now. I can play sports. He gave like very mundane examples. And I was like, no benefit. I kind of just dismissed. I said, what is the use? You were spoiled. You can live longer, but simply you're spoiling your life. It doesn't matter. If you die now, you live longer. It's the same, actually. That was a little bit mean, but we were young men. So I was young. I was like maybe 22, 20. So I'm also in fighting spirit. So you have to think in that context. And I'm kind of new to the tradition at that time. But my argument was like that. You die now or you die later, you're doing the same useless thing. So what is the difference? Better you die now. So because if you live longer, you may do all sorts of sinful activities and be more dangerous for you. So anyway, he didn't like my argument. He's probably very upset. But my point is that for Bhaktivedanta, what is welfare? It means to benefit the soul. Srila Prabhupada gives a nice analogy of this in the first 2:1 Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 2, verse 1, the commentary there. He says, what is the use of saving the dress of a drowning man? If a man is drowning and you grab his shirt, that is not very helpful for him. So in the same way, the body and mind is the dress of the soul. So what is the use of saving the dress of a drowning man? What is the use of doing activities simply directed at the body and mind and ignoring the soul inside? And that doesn't mean, again, that these activities are completely useless. Having a healthy body is very nice. Having a peaceful mind is very nice because then you can use that to focus on your higher objectives in life. But if you don't have any higher objectives of life or you don't use your good health, your peaceful mind to focus on, then how are you benefited? So this is a common concept of welfare in Bhaktivedanta tradition. Welfare means to benefit the soul. And the soul is ultimately benefited by bhakti and the gift of bhakti and the nourishing of bhakti through hearing about the glories of God. So Krishna is saying, I'm speaking these things to you with a desire to benefit you. Because if you hear this, your bhakti will be nourished, and that way you will be benefited. the soul will actually be benefited. Also, yateham priyamanaya. Priyamanaya is referring to Arjuna, or Arjuna is very dear to Krishna, and Krishna is also very dear to Arjuna. So Arjuna also will want to hear these subject matters because he is a devotee, and he will drink it up like nectar, our Acharya said, just like you have some nectar or very hot day, you cold water, and it's very nice. So in the same way, Arjuna will drink up these descriptions. So the next verse, this is two. We're going to do two verses here, two more verses. Na te vidu na me vidu suragana prabhavam na maharshaya. Ahama derhi devana maharshinam chasarvashaha. So why can't others speak about the glories of God? Why does Krishna have to speak it? So it says here, na me vidu suragana prabhavam na maharshaya. The great Devatas, Suragana means a group of godly persons, celestial beings in the celestial worlds. They do not know me. Now, maybe do Prabhavam. Prabhavam means power of God, or it means his birth. Because Krishna's birth is particularly very bewildering. Because he's the source of everything, how does he take birth? How are you simultaneously the source of everything and you take birth at the same time? So that doesn't make any sense. It's a very bewildering. That's very bewildering to hear that. How does the source of everything have a father or a mother? These things are very bewildering. So na maybe do suragana prabhavam. So these demigods, they do not know my power, my glories. So someone may say, well, that's because the demigods are absorbed in sense gratification. So when you're absorbed in sensual enjoyment, it obstructs your ability to know higher things. Just like now, just like now here in the East Village, people are nicely drinking, partying, having a good time. That is okay, but if you decide to go down that path, it obstructs your ability to know other things that are made possible by stopping sensual enjoyment. I often mention this in recent times that realizing deeper things in life requires an existential qualification, not just an academic one. Just like sometimes someone may argue, show me God. So we will say, well, what is your qualification for seeing God? Just like someone says, show me good health. How can I show you good health? I can tell you the path by which you can be healthy. And then you have to actually qualify yourself for good health by actually practicing healthy activities. Then you can experience health. Otherwise, you cannot. In the same way, if you want to see God or even speak of God, if you want to experience your own self, you have to have an existential qualification. You have to exist in a certain way. And that too for a period of time to get that sort of experience. So someone may argue because the devatas are absorbed in sensual enjoyment. When your senses are always engaged outside, then you cannot understand anything that's internal, right? You have this experience. Everyone has this experience. When you're engaged outside, even forget internal, just when you're trying to focus on writing an essay or something, and the phone keeps getting notifications, okay, and then you get back to your writing, and you get back to your writing. After 1 hour, you wrote 2 sentences. So they're supposed to take quick, but you've only written a little amount because you keep getting engaged outside, so you can't focus on writing your paper. So in a similar way, when the sense objects of this world keep us completely engaged outside, that although all souls have the potential for going deep, very few actually actualize that potential because they're too much distracted by the outside world. You understand? So someone may argue these demigods, they're nice enjoyers. They enjoy very good. So the reason they don't know your power and your birth is because they are absorbed in sense gratification. They can't get that existential qualification. So Krishna says, no, namaharshaya. The sages also don't know me. The sages are those who are completely detached from sensual enjoyment. They perform many austerities. They go inside. Many of them are self-realized. Krishna is saying they also don't know me. Even though they have such high existential qualification, they also do not know me. Really? Why not? Aham adirhi devana maharshinam chasarvasha. Because I am the origin of the Devas and the Rishis. And therefore, because I existed before they existed, they could not know me except for by disclosure, right? Anything that existed before you existed, you cannot know unless it's disclosed to you, right? I suspect many of you believe in the existence of Mahatma Gandhi at one point, that he existed. Yes, you believe this? Mahatma Gandhi existed. You believe Mahatma Gandhi? You don't know? You never heard this name before? No? What about Martin Luther King Jr.? Okay. You believe Martin Luther King Jr. existed? Have you seen him? So how do you know he existed? Yes. So this is the simplicity of a child. That's the correct answer. Your teachers taught you. That's how you come to know, isn't it? If I ask the same question to an adult, it'd be so complicated. You won't get the right answer. So whatever existed before we existed cannot be known except for by disclosure. And if Krishna is the origin of everything, as he will say in this chapter, then how can it be known by anything that came after him, such as the Devas and the Rishis, etc., all human beings? He is known by revelation and not otherwise. If there is no revelation, then you cannot. Just like if you've never heard about, your teacher never told you about Gandhi, so therefore there is no Gandhi for you, right? Because he has not heard about Gandhi, so Gandhi doesn't exist. He existed at some point, but practically for him, he does not exist because it's not been revealed. Right? They're very practical. They're very simple thing. Even in this world, there may be so many people that exist today, but he has not heard of. Someone can share some name of some person he's not heard of. I can't think of anyone.
Willie Mays.
I don't even know who that is. Is it Willie Mays? Is he still alive?
Yeah.
He's still alive? So anyway, so I think the example is clear. That which exists before you exist cannot be known except for by disclosure. So the Devas may be absorbed in sense gratification, but that's not the reason they don't know Krishna. And the sages are not absorbed in sense gratification. They have high level ecstasy, but they also don't know Krishna. Why? Because Krishna is the origin of everything. So unless he reveals himself to these entities that came after him, then they cannot know him. So therefore, he has to speak his own glory. Or it has to be known from those who know him. Does it make sense? Does it understand? This becomes an important theme of this chapter. You can call these like origin verses. Krishna has many verses in the Gita where he says, I'm the origin of things. And these origin verses are required because they help to give the context for when Krishna starts to identify himself as things and matter. When he says, of fishes, I am the shark. Of mountains, I am the Himalaya. So some people take it that is actually God that they're looking at. But no, Krishna's clarifying it by framing these, you can call them identity verses. Identity verses mean I am this, I am that, I am that. These things that matter. These are identity verses. You'll encounter many of them in Gita. But if you study the context of these identity verses, they're always framed around origin verses. I am the origin of these things. So these origin verses are important to create clarity of context. That he's not these things because it actually is him, 100%, but because he's the origin of them. And they have that connection to him. All right, this is the last verse we want to cover for today, 3. So hardly anyone knows God, only God really knows himself. And also one other person knows God, his devotee. So only those who hear from God or hear from his devotee can come to know about God. So this is kind of indicated in verse. Yo mam ajamanadim cha veti lokamaheshwaram asamudha samartyeshu sarvapapai pramuchate. So he says, he who knows me. So that someone is able to know. Otherwise, in the previous verse, no, the sages don't know me, Maharaj, the rishis don't know. So does anyone know you? Someone knows Krishna. So he who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is free from all sins. So the person that knows Krishna is called his devotee, Bhakta. The relationship between Bhakta and Bhagavan is called Bhakti. So Bhagavan is known by those who have bhakti to him, and those who have bhakti to him are called bhaktas. So what is their knowledge like? It says, and if you associate with such persons, then you get an opportunity to hear about God and know about God. That is how, what is this verb? Mahasevam dwaram ahur vimukti tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangha. If you associate with saintly persons, Mahat means a great soul, a devotee. Mahat Sevam, if you were in their service to great souls, then the doors of liberation are open. And Tamodoyam Yoshita Sangi Sangha. And if you associate with, how to say, can't say it really nicely, but fools and rascals. Well, rascal means an unprincipled person. So there's plenty of that going around today. So you associate with fools and rascals, Tamodonam Yoshitam Sangi Sangha, then the gates of hell are open, ignorance is opened up. So the doorway to understanding is depends on your association. So if you get the chance to meet great souls, then you can understand something about God. And what is their understanding? Yo mama jama anandhim cha. So they understand that the Lord is Ajahn. Ajahn means not having birth. So everything in this world comes into being, right? Your body comes into being, your mind comes into being, these different objects, they come into being. And because they come into being, they also go out of being at some point. That is the nature of the world. It's called bhava. But the word bhava means that which comes into existence and then goes out of existence. As the saying goes, it is here today and gone tomorrow. So everything comes into being and goes out of being. But the Supreme Lord is Ajahn. Ajahn means unborn, so he doesn't come into being. So he's very different from everything that exists in this world, including our bodies and minds. So here it says anadam. The word anadam means beginningless, because the soul actually doesn't come into being. What comes into being is the body of the soul, right? The body and mind of the soul comes into, but the soul doesn't come into being, because the soul is also eternal, right? You understand? The soul is eternal. It doesn't come into existence. It's not like in the Middle Eastern traditions where it's like there was God and then he created Adam from dust and then took one of Adam's ribs and created a lady, Eve. It's not like that according to Bhagavad-Gita. The souls are eternal. Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings in the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So the soul is as eternal as God. So the soul doesn't come into being. He can also be called as Ajahn for this reason, because he doesn't come into being. His body comes into being, but he does not come into being. So someone may say, how do you know this isn't talking about Krishna? So Krishna says anadam. Anadam means not having any beginning. So this anadam, our Acharya says, to distinguish him from souls who become liberated. So after some time, if you take spiritual life seriously, you can become liberated. So before you were not liberated, and then you can become liberated. So your liberation has a beginning date, so to speak. You understand? Now you are in ignorance. Me too. The conditioned souls of the material world, we are in ignorance. But if we follow some proper spiritual practice, we can become liberated. So when we become liberated, then our liberation has a beginning date. Yes? But the Lord is beginninglessly liberated. So this distinguishes him from the jivas, because the jivas have to go after liberation, whereas the Lord is eternally liberated. So for this reason, anadam, beginninglessly. Our liberation has a beginning. The Lord's liberation is beginningless. You understand? You can understand? Are you in ignorance now? Abhinav. Only sometimes? Lucky you. I'm in ignorance on the regular. So if I do bhakti practice seriously, then I can become liberated. Then my liberation has a beginning point. So that means there's a distinction between me and the Lord, right? The Lord's liberation is beginningless, whereas my liberation has a beginning. So finally, another category. There are a section of souls that are always liberated also. Just as God is liberated, now all his association spiritual reality, they are also already liberated. So what's the distinction between God and them? So here Krishna says, Loka Maheshwara, I'm the controller of worlds. So the eternally liberated souls are not the controller of worlds. In this way, Krishna is making a distinction between himself and all different sort of categories of existences that can be encountered in the world and the world hereafter. So asamuda samratreshu sarvapapapamujate. If you know this without being bewildered, asamudha. The reason Krishna has to say this is because people tend to be bewildered about these things. Someone thinks I am God. Someone thinks that we are all God together. Someone thinks so many things. There's so much bewilderment going on. If you want to get a little flavor for how much bewilderment is going on, then you just go to social media and go to the, like the hashtag like yoga channel or something. You can see it, so much bewilderment is there. Don't do that. It's just asamuda. Many people are confused about these topics. So anyone who knows these things without being bewildered, sarvapapai pramuchate, then they become liberated from all sin. And the sin here means the obstacle to the development of your spiritual life. Because of confusion about these topics, then a lot of obstacles come up in the development of spiritual life. Particularly, the not understanding the supremacy of God. It brings a lot of complications in people's life. Just like now in the conventional world, people don't understand God. They feel no obligation to him. And now we're seeing the whole society is starting to suffer, even its morality principles, even their sense of good is starting to struggle. It's hard for people to admit that because I think that humanity, there was a sense of the humanists that humanity is like inherently good and that you didn't need religion, you didn't need rules, you didn't need a Bible to tell you how to be good. But as humanity is very good at proving that may not be the whole truth. In fact, most of what people think of good, even their intuition of what is good, has actually been inherited by their forefathers. And people, even myself, we don't know how deep that inheritance is actually coming. They have this thing called family constellation. It's like a sort of healing therapy. Anyway, have you ever heard of this? Family constellation? It's a type of healing therapy. And basically what they do is they say a lot of the problems that we have right now are things that we've inherited from previous generations of our forefathers. And I've seen this thing done. It's kind of powerful. I mean, I don't get too much into these things because it's like a psychological mind-bending thing. It can be a little dangerous. But I've seen it where people have identified problems that generations before them have somehow traveled through their family line, and they are themselves exhibiting the same problems that previous generations have come. So there's something deep about family lineages, some connection is there. Therefore, one of the types of yagyas in Vedic culture, Pitru Yagya, you have to honor your forefathers. And usually the forefathers were honored by having children and by performing a rite once a year to the forefathers, because there's many things that the forefathers give to us. And one thing that they give, which most humanity today doesn't acknowledge, they give our sense of moral principles, the society, and that is actually inherited. Our sense of what is good, our sense of what is dignified and noble. All of these ideas are actually inherited. They didn't come up out of the blue just from someone thinking about it. And where they come from, those principles were coming from religious cultures. Generally, the West was Christian and so on, and in the East you had Vedas. These things were rooted in religious culture. So now that the religious culture is starting to dissipate, you see also people's sense of what is right, what is wrong, that is also starting to dissipate. Now they're having conversation about it, and then from the conversation it gets lower and lower and lower. Right? Well, first that's just, like I've seen videos like this. I've not watched them. I've seen video titles like this where is incest a bad thing? Like just like really weird stuff coming. Why are they having these conversations? Well, let's just have a conversation about it. Why? Wait, no. Why should I have a conversation about this? So, but because that their sense of what is moral, what is good, is intrinsically tied to their relationship with God. So once God is disappearing from the scenario, this is starting in the degradation of even the conventional good is starting to be degraded. So Krishna says here, if you know this thing about me without being bewildered, then you'll become free from sin. Otherwise, the opposite thing is if you don't know about God, then you don't know about the obligation of the soul to God and so on, then your life will be filled with many obstacles. And you don't have to believe that. You can just look at your own life, and of course you'll not attribute your complications to your lack of God consciousness. So that is also the misfortune of the situation. But if you have proper knowledge, then you can immediately make the connection that I've neglected my God consciousness, and therefore this problem is coming. So we'll continue this section. It's a very important one. Are there any comments, questions, concerns? I'm going to start reproducing those questionnaires. I have them actually, but usually I used to end the classes with handing out questionnaires to everyone to make sure that they were hearing the class. Yes.
And so when you said that we inherit problems,
Yes.
what kind of problems do you do? Physical illnesses or
Yeah, that was just an example. All sorts of problems apparently can be inherited from the forefathers. In this modality, they try to demonstrate that a lot of issues that people suffer today are things that can be traced in the family lines. Like perhaps a simple example is alcoholism, or another thing is these are like more physical things, but like certain diseases, they kind of travel in family. That's kind of physical or genetic. But they also show psychological things that come up in family lines, like people suffering from dementia or some sort of debilitating psychological disease, and how that travels through family lineages. And it's kind of fascinating. I didn't get too much into it, but when I first saw this modality performed on devotees in the community, one lady, she's a devotee, she actually lives here in New York, and she's a professional, she does it for a living. And she was doing a seminar with a group of devotees, about 100, 150 of us. And she asked a question, she says, who here doesn't like their in-laws? So probably everyone raised their hand, but there were two devotees that had both hands raised, like they were surrendering to God. So when those two devotees who had both it was a man and a woman, and the whole room erupted into laughter. So the devotee who was leading the session, she didn't understand why we were all laughing. And we said, that is husband and wife. That was husband and wife who had both hands up. That was the husband and wife. That's why we were all laughing. So she brought them up to the front of the room, and she had each of them stand and, near to each other, but separate. And then she selected different devotees from the audience to represent the previous generations of forefathers, going all the way up to Krishna. So there was like a line behind each devotee, maybe 7, 8, 9 devotees going all the way up to Krishna. And so it's very freaky. She had all those devotees just kind of like talk to each other about different problems, like completely random things. And just to each other talk about those things and kind of like put it out in the ether. And somehow, whatever these devotees were talking about, it was very, I can't describe it perfectly because this was many years ago that I saw this. But somehow all the things that were being talked about by these devotees standing behind these two main devotees started to affect the devotees in the front. So some of them just started crying, like out of nowhere, just started crying. It was very freaky, but fascinating at the same time. And then as the things got settled in these different groups of devotees who were representing their previous forefathers, then this person was getting settled. So I don't know exactly how that works, or because I'm not involved in that modality, but energetically, it was a very interesting exercise that I observed. And the idea is that definitely there's a relationship between the type of families we're born into. There's some connection, why you have that sort of karma that you get born into a certain family, and what is the impact that plays in one's life. There's some connection there that's deep. Even like if we're reading now 7th Canto Bhagavatam in the morning, and we'll hear that Prahlad Maharaj, because of his pure devotion, something like, 71 generations before or after him will be blessed to get liberated, just from having that family connection. So there's something energetically, at least, that's there. And in the context that I brought up, it was kind of more simple, that we inherit our culture from our forefathers, right? So now that our culture is becoming more and more crazy, that's the culture that we're leaving for the next generation. It gets inherited. And the modern, in previous cultures, because they understood that they inherited their culture from their forefathers, they always honored their forefathers because they had a more peaceful culture, a more sane culture because of them. But in our culture, we don't honor our forefathers. We don't care what they've given. We try to reinvent the wheel every generation. And that reason, the generations are starting, each next subsequent generation is starting to degrade more. So that's a more simple point, actually, like this. Okay. So yes.
If you're trying to make a decision or evaluate the situation, how do you question the situation to know that it's not coming just from a sense gratification place, or if it's really the right path for you? Would you have anything?
Yeah, how to know what decisions I make is not coming from like basically pure ego, sense gratification. So for starters, you need a knowledge base. So that's Bhagavad-Gita class. You need more and more, because knowledge allows for discernment, right? Discernment for what is right, what is wrong. As a general principle, at least when I consider myself, I just assume that I'm coming from a sense gratification place. And then because I'm conditioned, so my general mode of thinking is always in light of the principle of where I'm going to get the most enjoyment. And I don't think of that as a self-deprecating principle. I just I take it more as like a matter of fact that my consideration is in light of that. So because of that, you have to look to your knowledge. What is my knowledge advising me to? How does my knowledge advise me to respond in this particular situation? So that means you have to spend a lot of time engaging with your knowledge, like Bhagavad-Gita or other literatures. And then when you come across a situation, you have to ask, how does your knowledge ask you to respond? Now, usually our knowledge is diametrically opposed to our inbuilt mechanisms of response. For example, Krishna will say things like tolerate. Some sort of difficulty here, you just tolerate. That's what Krishna will say. But our mind is like, tolerate? He owes you an apology. So they inbuilt mechanisms of response usually go in one direction. Our knowledge usually takes us in another direction. And we were talking about this in Bhagavad-Gita class the other day. If you follow the direction of your knowledge, it is austere. It's usually difficult. So we kind of need to engage with our knowledge a lot. Like a daily reading. One thing that can be done easily is just read a chapter of Gita every day. Not the big purports and all of that, but just looking at just the verses. You just read every single day, one chapter of Gita. And just get the Gita in you more and 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 more. And as you engage with knowledge, you start to see the world through the eyes of knowledge. Krishna will speak about this later, Jnana Chakshu, the eye of Gyan, or knowledge. And not just the eye of emotions that are kind of pre-programmed in your mind according to your karma. And then when you're coming across a situation, then you'll have a choice at that time to follow your knowledge or to follow your impressions. And we'll fail sometimes or many times, but if you fail and you catch yourself failing, then that will help you the next time to, okay, I need to respond better according to my knowledge. Frankly speaking, if you follow knowledge like Bhagavad-Gita, then you become a little bit like stoic towards everything. Even if someone has like wronged you or something like that, you're like, yeah, that's life. I'm not saying that some situations will oblige you to respond. Like Arjuna's in a life situation that's obliged him to respond in a very specific way. But a lot of life situations we find ourselves in at present, most of them you could just kind of be like, and just carry on with life. But it's very difficult. The ego does not allow us so much room to do that. So good luck. Yes.
When we, because you're mentioning how the real benefit is the benefit of the soul and ultimately connection to God. And sometimes, or a lot of times, we kind of, at least for myself, I like to describe benefits of spiritual life in like the most extravagant way that's more attractive to my mind. But we all have kind of our own subjective ideas of what happiness looks like, or what peace looks like, or what fulfillment looks like. Whereas in the scripture, it's very specific. There's not really much room for our inventiveness or our ideologies. And so when we, so I guess my question is, how do we understand, what is, because when you explain to someone the value of spiritual life, happiness as we understand it is not as it truly is. Happiness doesn't mean that you always have a smile on your face or like that. It's something that's like quite deep, actually, where it's like, in all experiences of life, whether positive or negative, you feel that satisfaction.
Right.
So then, like, what does it really mean to be successful in spiritual life? In that connection with God, living your life in such a way that you live according to those principles.
Yeah, that sounds like success. I always say the root, I think, you remember you were asking this the other day, but I said the starting point of success in spiritual life is that self-satisfaction in any situation in life. This is the beginning of success. That even you can live in a palace, or you can live, in a small room like Travis yesterday was in the attic room, sleeping in that little cubby hole, in the attic. But you gotta like crawl in. You like literally have to crawl in. And Travis is very tall.
That's my new room.
That's your new room.
I was scared. I didn't see it.
Oh, you didn't see it? I knew it was there. You like crawl into the cubby hole, and then stretch his legs out and present like that. He's like, high as So self-satisfaction means you can live there, or you can live in a palace also. And you're not attracted or repulsed by either situation. Krishna will describe this later in chapter 14, verse 21 through 25. I've been, at least recently, been thinking about that more. Just Atmaramata. Atmaramata means the quality of being self-satisfied. Atmarama. This is the beginning of success in spiritual life. An extreme example is Shukadeva Goswami walking past these women taking bath in the lake, and he was naked, they were naked. He wasn't disturbed, and they could see that he wasn't disturbed, so they just carried on taking bath. They could see he's not even seeing that we were women, because he's so absorbed in the happiness of the self, swasukha nibrita chetas. He's not even seeing this, so they continue bathing, he continued walking. That's powerful. And I shared this the other day, where Prabhupada was asked by a reporter, because Prabhupada was sitting, his disciples would make him very nice seats like this, even at the airport, and when the reporters came to see, they would make a nice vyasasana, this nice opulent seat. So a reporter asked Prabhupada, why are you sitting in such a nice seat? He got asked this question many times. So in this one particular instance, why are you sitting in this seat? So Prabhupada said, the difference between you and I is that I can be in a room, it was a male reporter, I can be in a room full of naked women and not be disturbed, and you cannot. And the reporter's friend was also there. He started laughing, kind of like true, true point. I mean, imagine the level of self-satisfaction you have to be when you're in a particular type of body, let's say a man's body, and you're in a situation like that, and no disturbance. Don't test it out or anything like that. I want to test out my Atmaramata. We already know what's going to happen there. But that is the beginning of kind of success in spiritual life. I mean, there are probably more accommodating ways you can think of success. Like success means just waking up in the morning and, and showing up to the whatever. They're usually more accommodating, kind of like motivational speaking ways of thinking of success. But actually, success means Atmaramata. If I'm killed also, then I'll chant Hare Krishna. Like one time Prabhupada was talking about World War III is coming. So they asked Prabhupada, what will happen if we go out on Harinam in like a war-torn country? If we go out on Harinam and they drop a bomb on us. And Prabhupada said we will start the Harinam here and we'll finish the Harinam in the spiritual world. Can you imagine hearing that? It's like, okay, now let's go on Harinam. And you're like, I don't know about that answer. That's Atma Ramasa. That's powerful. I like that example of Haridas Thakur. Stop this chanting or we'll cut your body into pieces or we'll beat you to death in the marketplace. And Haridas said, you can cut my body into pieces also. I'm a chant. How you could be so self-situated that there's no question of fear, no question of anxiety, no question of like displeasure or agitation, attraction. Just self-situated. This is Atma Rama Shamunayo Negranta, right? Negranta means free from the knot of false ego that makes us agitated, disturbance. This is the beginning of success in spiritual life. So if you say it like that, it doesn't seem like we have any hope. So we'll try.
So if someone's like truly spiritual, does that mean they have gotten rid of all of their human emotions? Like you don't experience them anymore?
No, their human emotions are there, but they don't identify with them. So you'll hear Krishna talk about this in chapter 14, again, same verses 21 through 25. It's not that they don't experience them, they just don't identify with them. Or they don't give them more energy than they deserve. You put it in that sort of language. So when you identify with the material body and mind, you give those things more energy than they deserve. Just like the body is there, you have to take care of the body because the body is a means of spiritual practice. But you don't have to have like 150 dresses and shoes and huge palace. If by karma those things come, that may be one thing. But you don't have to spend so much time taking care of it. To maintain the body is not extremely difficult, although most solutions moving in that direction getting harder and harder. It is not extremely difficult. You have to eat, keep it clean, basic clean, live simply. But now it's all becoming about the body. Everything is so much attention on the body. For the Instagram, for this thing, for that thing, working out, the cosmetic industry. Go to a store, Macy's, have a whole huge shop of just lipstick. Or whatever it is. That means putting too much attention for the body and losing perspective. So self-realized people aren't like that. They also take care of the body. They have a body, but they don't give it more attention than required. They also have emotions, but they don't give those emotions unnecessary attention. Only as required for their services, at least in the case of bhaktas, only as required for their service to God, they will give energy to a particular emotion. If you're a Gyani, they don't give any energy to any of it. They're just like cold, callous. But bhaktas are not like that. They're not callous to emotions. Emotions are very nice for serving Krishna. But if they're not meant for serving Krishna, they don't give it so much importance. Like someone that calls you a bad name is mean to you. Now, when you embody concept of life, you really get freaked out. But when you're not embodying concept of life, it's not even an issue. It doesn't even come up. You can see the mind thing, but you just immediately focus back on the soul. I was reading this one section of the 5th canto. It's talking about how Rishabh-Dev, this is also there in the Avanti Brahmin pastime, people were coming there and passing foul air on them and urinating on his food. So I was trying to put myself in that scenario. I mean, because the Bhagavatam literally says foul air, which is like, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. If someone came and just like passed foul air. I like really tried to put myself in that scenario. Because out of everything, like they have more egregious things in the list, but somehow the foul air was just like really, I like zoomed in on that particular thing. I was like, suppose someone came over and just like passed foul air in my face. I was like, it's gonna be a fight. There's no question because of the body concept of life. But Rishabh, Dev, or Devanti Brahmana, this description is given there, and said they were not disturbed. I'm like, they don't even have to pass foul air on me. If they pass foul air near me, I'm going to be disturbed. So they have emotions also. But they come up, but they don't unnecessarily identify with them and give them more energy than required. This is the answer that I'm giving. So like I said, these things are, unless we start purifying ourselves more and more, they become very abstract and hard to understand. But as you start to live a life of purification, you start to see how becomes possible. When you, especially if you have a period where you really engage in deep sadhana, deep spiritual practice, you can start to intuit how this is possible, to have that sort of state of consciousness where you're just like settled and kind of stable, really emotionally, and stable. Your consciousness is just fixed. So as long as we try to understand these things from where we're at now, it becomes some challenges there, because we're very much identified with our bodies and mind right now. So it becomes very hard to understand how there could even such thing as possible. But if we take our spiritual life seriously and we start to purify ourselves more and more and more, then you almost have an intuitive understanding of these topics without even if you don't hear a lot of specific details, you start to understand it intuitively because you're purifying yourself. Otherwise, they do remain quite abstract. It's like, nah, man, you can't just let someone disrespect you like that. I mean, I get humility and everything, but that's not God conscious. We were mentioning this topic on Sunday at my Bhagavad-Gita program about how this one lady mistreated another lady, and this one lady didn't have any problem with that. So one lady in the audience, she said, well, did she at least apologize? And I had a good laugh on that one. It's like revealing our consciousness. We're so deeply identified with our bodies and mind that we take everything so seriously. Of course, we have to suffer because we love. Continue this section on Monday. I'll bring the questionnaires from the Bhakti Shastri book. I also start working on chapter 7, 8, 9. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Start working on those. Those questions are quite easy, but you probably don't remember so much from chapter 7, 8, 9. So start working on that, I can send to you guys also if you want. I sent you the other thing just today. I can send you our little Bhakti Shastri and you can see what questions I'm talking about if you want. We'll do in class in the future. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Hare Krishna. Oh, I'm trying to be that. Oh, nice comment. Oh, nice cover. I didn't see this. Okie dokie.